Welcome to another episode of the Fascia Masters podcast. Today we're going to be talking more on the subject of block therapy and fitness, but not just the fitness conversation. It's a very popular question. I get it often. We get in the community group often. You get it often. And it's, when should you be doing block therapy if you're doing fitness, if you're performing workouts, activities, sports? Should it be before or should it be after? So this episode is dedicated to really answering that question because there's many variables that come into play and really what your goal and intention is. And then with our information based off of this, you can ultimately be the one to make your own decision. So I think let's just initially talk about what are we doing when we're doing block therapy. We are performing fascia decompression. Now we have to realize that the body has become our structure based off of, like our fascia structure based off of how we typically position ourselves throughout the day, how we breathe, our habits. So again, if you are laying on a couch for 2 hours a day on the same side, if you're sleeping on your side all the time or on your front and you're playing an asymmetrical sport, then you're sitting at a desk majority of the time and you're leaning, and now you're going to the gym from that posture, which could be all of these collapses elsewhere, and you're not truly aware of where balance should be, where these proper micro foundations should be positioned when you are, start off with something very generic, call it more of a weight training / bodybuilding workout, then you can be building yourself further out of alignment. And of course, that comes down to the idea of how powerful are these adhesions that have built up. Because if you're younger and you don't have as many adhesions in the most simplest terms, then even just performing some movement can help release adhesions and create fluidity within the body. But the idea now that block therapy and fascia decompression aside, if you are not conscious and aware of your posture in general, and now you're going to add more force to the body without correcting your posture and those habits, really, of how you hold yourself throughout the day, then you will be building yourself further out of alignment. And this can split into many topics on how are you working out? How do you know how to position your shoulder blades during this exercise, your feet, your hips, your knees in relation to the rest of the body? So that's really getting into like the biomechanics and that conversation. We're going to leave that a little bit more to the side for this conversation. So once you now understand that, okay, none of us are symmetrical. We're not in a perfect position, but we want to at least understand where we've fallen out of alignment, how we can start to restore that balance and now integrate that into the gym, because none of us are coming from a perfect slate of symmetry. So regardless, we're all going to be working out at the gym to an extent from asymmetries. And that's okay because we're not perfectly symmetrical. But step one is if you can actually release these major adhesions, restore that space in those collapses, understand your unique body and how you can actually use weight training to your advantage to actually help build and strengthen your body more in that correct alignment, you're doing amazing things for you. So this was a big thing that I struggled with. Actually, Deanna, this is hilarious. Sorry, you haven't even said a word yet. Hi.
I'm here.
I kind of just jumped right in there. But when I was, I think, 19, really getting into bodybuilding, I'm like, I want to put together a block therapy for bodybuilders program. And I wrote it all out. And this is what it was. My workout regime, and then just saying block before and after. And I just showed positions because I couldn't decide if you should be doing it before or after. I thought, well, they both have benefits. So it started from a very simplistic understanding there. And I think there's still a lot of power to that. So the idea in simple terms, to do block therapy, fascia decompression before you weight train is to activate the breath, optimize flow in your body, find major collapses and adhesions in your body that you want to release so that you're not strengthening those adhesions more powerfully in the gym, so that you can now bring that awareness and that understanding in the gym and strengthen from at least a bit of a better alignment. We're not saying make these quantum leaps and be perfect, but if you can try to improve this time after time after time, and you know how to weight train, I'm going to use the word correctly, there's a million different ways of doing it, then at least you can actually make very powerful progress because you're actually training in a unique way to your posture. Because there's so many exercises that you can do. If you're just saying, okay, well, I want to do chin-ups today, cool. Or I want to do push-ups today, cool. And that can be great. But that exercise can also be detrimental to your alignment if you don't understand the micro foundations and how everything should be positioned.
Can we talk just for a minute, just to give people the visual of when we talk about falling into the patterning, like what that looks like. So, you know, when you're on a beach and you see like little pathways in the sand, or
like
even
ripples, or
or even walking through the forest and you see the pathways that the animals have created. So they're never straight lines. They're always following the pathway of least resistance,
right?
Because that's what we do. And sometimes the shortest distance from A to B isn't the straight line from a time perspective. It might be you winding around a whole bunch of things to get there, because if you try to go from A to B, you might encounter a big boulder and then you got to climb over the boulder,
right?
Where maybe it's just faster to walk around the boulder.
Yeah.
So with our patterning, when we get caught into grooves, it's that path of least resistance that we fall into those joint spaces. So again, just sitting here, if I don't have a strong diaphragm and supporting my rib cage, as soon as I collapse, my nature is, oh, I'm going to collapse left because I'm right-handed. Other people will collapse right. It's not always dependent necessarily on what side you're dominant on, because again, you could be that tennis player that's right-handed, or you could be that violin player that's right-handed. If you kind of put your body into both positions to do either one, you see how you're creating a very different posture in both, even though you're right-handed. So it's all about understanding that we are, until we're conscious and until we create change, we're always going to continue to fall into those grooves. So yes, as you said, when you go into the gym, you just start working out unconsciously, you're simply increasing the strength and the depth of those grooves to make them even easier to fall into. With repetition, we continue to, grade our way through.
100%.
And then it's almost like snowbanks, right?
And absolutely. And you just saying that, like, I feel that as you're communicating that, and I feel that other people will feel that as well, because the proprioception that we have when we're performing an exercise, we may feel like we're performing it in a symmetrical way, but then have somebody take a video of you doing a push-up, a bench press, a squat, a chin-up, jumping, like whatever exercise you're doing, you're going to realize that you're not symmetrical.
Well, and I see this all the time when I'm working on patients, because I'll have them lying on their back. And if I'm working on their neck, for example, I want to be positioned right behind the neck so that I feel like I'm balanced with their body. So I'll often say, can you move your legs over to the right so you're aligned? And then they'll say, well, I thought I was aligned.
Exactly.
Well, you're not, because again, those unconscious twists of those adhesions are pulling you out of that space.
Exactly. And that can actually alter your proprioception.
Yeah.
Which is a pretty interesting statement.
So let's just say, what is proprioception? Because I loved this conversation, because when I was in athletic therapy, of course, proprioception basically is your mind's awareness of your limbs in space. So one of the examples I was given as I was going through my athletic therapy training is, if you're a pitcher, of course, aim is really important as the pitcher. That's kind of the most important thing.
Yeah.
So if you have a shoulder injury, you can rehab range of motion, you can rehab strength, but you also have to rehab proprioception, because just because you gain full range of motion and strength back doesn't mean that your aim is there. And that's something that they talk about too. If you've sprained your ankle and you don't gain back that ability to balance, you can, again, regain the strength and flexibility, but you might have one of those like weak ankles where you just kind of walk on a little tiny edge and suddenly you go over because you haven't trained your body to pull it back to where it should be unconsciously.
Right.
And I mean, proprioception too is like some people, like they don't even know you threw something at them, but they catch it like this, right? And because they're so quick to understand where's that ball compared to where my hand is, and they know where to put it. Where you see little kids like trying to play baseball and they're trying to learn how to catch, and like, you know, the ball ends up over there, but they think they're catching it until they really can gauge where is something moving, where do I have to be to catch it. So like all of those things, it comes with time and with practice.
Yeah.
And so
this is so funny because I talked to Tash about this recently, where I'm like,
Tash being your girlfriend.
Yeah. There's the amount of times where I'm reaching for something in the cupboard and something falls like to the right of me, and I just somehow snatch and catch from, like, I've been doing this for years, where I'm like, I'm pumping my own tires. I'm like, I have cat-like reflexes when things are just going to fall. And I don't even know, like, even the other day, I'm like, how did I do that? It's really interesting. And I don't, you exactly, but I don't like practice it. I think it just comes from probably more of an awareness to your body and to doing more decompression work.
But you're practicing it all the time. By becoming aware of your alignment, you're practicing your proprioception.
Okay, so that just answered the question. Okay, love it. So
because that's the whole thing. Like when you are aware of how you're standing, like you're at the gym and you're pumping weights, but you're aware that, okay, is my foundation off? Do I have more weight on that left foot or the right foot? Like that's your brain becoming integrated into, even when you're sitting, do I have equal weight on both sit bones? That's proprioception.
Yeah.
Because if not, if you think this is balanced and you're way over on the left side, then your proprioception's off.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, that's great. I'm glad we actually clarified more of that definition. So the idea of doing block therapy before weight training, there's so many. I just want to let's just hone in on the idea around this, and then we'll talk about doing it after, because you have to really get it, because there's many reasons why you want to do it before or why you want to do it after. So you might find after doing block therapy, assessing your body, weight training, and after people assess your videos, like, oh, wow, like I'm really twisting over to the left. When I'm squatting, like my whole pelvis is like rotating to the left, then I shift my body weight to the right, and then I come up. So you have to look at your body first and understand, rather than just saying, oh, I'm going to do a couple random block therapy positions. I think once you elevate with your own understanding and the practice of doing block therapy with yourself, it's really just getting to know yourself better, then you can find that, okay, the reason I'm doing that is because I am being pulled from my right foot and my right ankle and calf is just locked, and that's affecting how this hip's working. So I have to shift my weight more to the left, and then that causes this twisting in the pelvis for me to come back up, and then my spine is out of alignment because my hips and my feet are, and then the squat is literally going to be compressing you in not a proper way. And it's fine to add weight to your back and your spine and add compression to your spine if you're doing it consciously with alignment, but it can also be detrimental, and maybe it's not if you do it a few times, but if you're working out multiple times a week for years and years and years, then eventually that can be building up chronic
Those grooves get bigger
and bigger, and it's just that much more difficult for you to get out of it. What block therapy does is it kind of can blast through those grooves so that you can create your own path.
And okay, so let's just talk about snowbanks for a second, because snowbanks are like, you know, if you've got a sidewalk and all through winter, you know, the guys come and clear the snow. Now you've got like a pathway, and then you've got the snowbanks. So when we start to have spring like we have right now, and we're starting to see the thawing, what are the last things to melt?
All the stuff with the dirt.
The dirt, yes. So the more toxic we are, sorry, I just took a bit of a side shot here, but the more toxic we are also, the more energy it's going to take to actually melt through those grooves, because there's dirt stuck in those grooves too.
Right.
So like, I don't even know why I went there, but
no,
I lived at a snowbank.
No, it makes sense, because the more powerful a groove becomes, it's obviously going to pull in and attract things. So it can be a little bit more challenging to get rid of that groove and to create a new pathway. So what we really want to do is find where are these main areas of collapse and where these habits and grooves are located so that you can retrain it. And I have another great understanding of this. So when I went through, I remember like I even brought you to the gym years and years and years ago. I'm like, okay, let's figure out some other stuff here. But I was trying something and it was great. I thought it was a brilliant idea what we were working through, but I actually noticed I took it too far and it actually caused some other issues that I had to work through. And I also have some adhesions, which we all do, but especially behind my right scapula, more in that subscap. And that has pulled my muscle belly as well. So you have the fascia now, which we know connects the muscle belly to the bone, but also the muscle fibers, the cells, everything. It's pulling that away. So if I'm wanting, and I notice that a lot in my chest and my deltoid. So now if I'm doing a pushing motion, well, it's really caught and trapped well under my scapula. So I'm actually now training that pec incorrectly and that whole fascial connection and area. So now it's just like I'm strengthening this incorrect groove and it's pulling me and yanking me even more out of alignment. So this is just a kind of general idea. If you know that you have these big adhesions that are going on, well, you got to really work. I would say take a little bit of a break from the gym because that can be causing you more harm or good, or at least change up the style you're doing so you're not just like pounding the tissue and the muscle and pulling it away from its home.
And one of the things that I'm sure we've all seen in people that are, really into bodybuilding, especially in men, is you'll see the stretch marks in the front of the shoulder area through this pec area here. So, I mean, just as you're mentioning this, is giving me this visual because yes, if we've got a huge grip under here, which most do because we've collapsed in the rib cage, the shoulder blades hook around and then they adhere to the ribs here. So as that grip keeps attracting more and more and more of the collagen from the surrounding space, now you're left with these stretch marks.
Yeah.
Because all you have is the elastin left.
Right.
You don't have that collagen to support the structure. So now, again, here's an indicator of imbalance. And if your goal is to be super, super big, I mean, I'm all for looking exactly how you want to be, but for all of us, there is that, we shouldn't want to push ourselves beyond that perfect ability to hold whatever size and shape without causing destruction. Right. Because once you get into that tipping point where it's like, well, now you're so big that you're literally creating weakness in other areas to support strength in other areas. Now we become imbalanced. So now your body isn't really that strong. You might be strong doing a couple things, but look at the Bruce Lee, right? Who can, move in all of these different ways, almost like a snake,
100%.
Compared to the person that might be like super hulky, but only if you're in that one little range where he can hit you. Like, are you ever, because you can move faster than him now too, right?
Absolutely. Well, and that's a good point that you mentioned, because if you're doing the same workouts with the same exercises, and bodybuilders are notorious for doing this, their chest day is going to be, this is an example, flat bench press, incline dumbbell press, flies, some sort of fly. Very generic. It works if you want to have the goal of simply building muscle, but now you are creating grooves and strength only in those ranges. So now and bodybuilders don't really, some of them, I'm not going to classify all of them, don't care that much about range of motion. For some times, range of motion can actually hinder their progress or cause more issues because it could be stretching something too much and then it pulls this joint out, then there's more vulnerability there because they don't have that strength in those further ranges. And they're like, no, I just want to do half reps or something. And they don't do that all the time, but there's so many different goal. They have a different goal and a different, they do switch up their training methods, but the point being is you get stuck in the groove by doing the same workouts all the time. And now you can try to improve your alignment when you're stuck in that groove. And sure, that's better than being stuck in an unhealthy or asymmetrical groove where you're doing the same thing all the time, but you're still just training the fibers in a linear way.
Yeah.
You're not creating true strength. And that's fine if that's their goal. But the whole point of this is to talk about doing it before or after. So,
and I think what we're talking about is we're trying to share how can you be physical in your activities, whatever they are, and bring health into them.
Totally.
So that they don't add up and create. Because again, look at the elite athlete in their 20s or 30s. They're likely, unless they've, integrated some kind of different exercise as they get older, the ones that are going to age faster.
big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Well, and even like looking at bodybuilders, and of course now they can be on like heavy PEDs, and that can be changing their appearance and how they age. But the point of, if you have adhesions that are so powerful that you can start to feel it, you see manipulation in your muscle belly and how things are forming and looking, and that's a massive indicator that there's adhesions that are literally they're so powerful, it's pulling that whole structure out of alignment. So the biomechanics of that shoulder, for example, is off. And you can't just fix it if the adhesion is that powerful with movement alone. You need to decompress it. So a great thing to do is, do block therapy in that area, dive in there, get deep and release it, and now bring a lot of conscious awareness to that and how that shoulder blade should be sitting, how that shoulder joint should be aligned, and what that proper contraction should be, so that you're actually strengthening from more of a proper foundation. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but make those little baby steps. And I mentioned before, if you have a lot of powerful adhesions, take a break from the gym or drop the weight significantly and just focus on range of motion, fluidity, and just keep releasing so that it can actually complement your fascia decompression or block therapy process. So that's one view to look at. You have to find these major adhesions in your body and release them prior to going to the gym, or else you're just strengthening that groove and adhesions further out of alignment.
So let's take it from the gym and now talk about like golf, for example, because if we are golfing, of course, one of the things we want is really good rotation, as well as shoulder range of motion, as well as a proper stance. So there's a whole bunch of things to look at. But if you've been golfing for 10, 20, 30 years, you've created these grooves of movement to gain access to your swing. Mm-hmm. But those grooves aren't just what they were 10 years ago. Again, they've become deeper and deeper and deeper with every passing of this asymmetrical movement. So eventually, like my dad, you get to a point where you're maybe 60, 65, 70. He was a wonderful golfer before. And then he just ended up pretty much giving up the game because, he wasn't enjoying it anymore because he wasn't able to play as well as he was in past years, because he was so, as we've talked before, he was literally a C in his posture because of all the things that he did, lying on a couch being one in particular, but also the game of golf, because he didn't know how to do this work or didn't put the time into doing this work. So to block that whole core space before going and playing a golf game, to bring more ease of rotation would be a great thing to do before a golf game.
Absolutely. And this is, again, coming back to the idea of having to first assess and understand where is your limitation in your swing, because you have to know how to, and this goes for like any sport. I know we're just honing into golf, but it could be literally your ankles. If there's a lack of ankle mobility and connection to the ground, that's where the force is really getting generated from. But if you don't have that, well, then some other area in your body is going to have to start taking that stress. So maybe your hips are going to be working. Well, actually, it's typically not the hips, but maybe it is more of your shoulders are doing the work, or more of your, it could be anything. It could be the knees, sure. It could be the hips. It could be the arms.
The point is your body figures out how to move around the dysfunction to get the action.
Exactly.
And that's the groove.
That's the groove, but that also is going to cause too much stress on that area, which is going to cause an injury slightly, and then it's going to repair it in that negative groove pattern because you don't understand the proper, I'm not going to say you don't understand the proper golf swing. It's just the body isn't working in your favor to generate a proper quote unquote golf swing. And now every golf swing is slightly different, and that's great. We're all unique on how we perform these sports, but my train of thought.
I think the point here.
Train of thought.
Yeah, I know.
Where's it going?
It's flown away. It happens.
But oh no, this is what I was going to mention. You actually don't have to be strong for golf. It's primarily technique. I was talking to a good buddy. We were at the golf simulators the other day, and now he's driving far. But he has like 3 coaches at a time. And that's all he does. And he's like, I'm actually swinging less hard now. I just understand the technique, the momentum, how to snap everything properly, and whatever. I'm like,
effortless effort. That's the goal. Always.
Totally.
Yeah.
And that's what's really cool. But people try to force it. And even like, I don't have a perfect golf swing. I have a decent golf swing, but like, there's still a lot to work on. And there's times where I'm adding too much force, or I'm not in the rhythm of it, or in that proper tempo. Tempo is also so important, because if you're off by a split second, that's, your face could be open, it could be closed, you could be coming down or up on it incorrectly, and that's going to be impacting the game.
So I have a really good just sort of analogy with force versus persuasion, because we were talking just recently about how the straightest line might not be from A to B a straight line. Like, you might have to walk around that boulder, and that will be the shorter distance than trying to climb up over top.
Right.
So I remember years ago I was walking through a mall, and I saw this mother, and she was dragging her screaming kid by the hand, just dragging it, because she was trying to get out of the store and into the mall or whatever. So she's pulling this screaming kid. And as I'm watching this, and I'm seeing the stress with the kid and the mother and the people around that are having to endure this shriek, I thought, wow, like, if you just let the kid kind of meander around and go and see what they want to go and see, or even like walking a dog, are you going to drag it by the leash, or are you going to let it like do its little bit of whatever?
Yeah.
And then, I mean, that distance walked might be longer, but by the time you get there, are you going to be better off for the screaming kid that you've now upset all the people in the area as well as yourself? Or you've taken that extra couple minutes just because, like, let's just meander a little bit.
Right.
Like, that's how energy travels. It's in waves and spirals. So those straight lines, there's a force to that compared to a persuasion. So same in the body. If we try to force ourselves to look a certain way or to perform a certain action, that likely will come with pushback from your fascia. Pushback is collagen pushing back. That's adhesion. So the point is, if we don't have that proper structure, as you were mentioning in the feet, like just thinking about 80% of your body weight on the balls of your feet, try to take that golf swing. What has happened to the rest of your body as you're going through this action when you're on the balls of your feet, compared to if you're settled into your heels and everything is seated back, and now you've got your joints moving freely in their ranges instead of being this way and trying to force the ball to go from A to B.
100%. And that's a very common issue for people, is that they have too much weight on the balls of their feet. And that was actually an issue for me too, because you're lined up with your clubs and your arms in front of you. So you're kind of pulled forward right away, but you have to learn how to be a little bit more seated back. And that's how you really generate your power. You see any of the big hitters in golf, it's all generating from primarily their heels. And that's where more of the weight should be, rather than on the balls of their toes. Like you can hardly...
Well, that's how we should be in general, though, is more on our heels.
Absolutely.
But we're not. And that's the thing. So when you're starting to play, you're guaranteed starting out of alignment inside your body. So then you try to create this perfection outside your body when inside your body is all off.
Exactly. And when you can start to determine what areas in your body are sticky, a little more glued, has a lack of mobility before you play a golf game, you can more so isolate that area, because we still understand, like, yeah, you have to target the whole body. But if you're like, okay, I got to leave in 20 minutes, I'm going to do like 15 minutes of block and my hips are just jammed. Okay, well, maybe you want to do the belly position and get into the psoas from that area, activate the breath, and then the 2 hip flexors positions, and then boom, that's going to help. That's great. And then maybe right before you tee off, you're doing a little hip movement and mobility to get that going. That's great. But maybe you realize that, oh no, it's actually really my left side that's stuck and frozen. Maybe that's where you're going to primarily focus on releasing before you perform golf. And that can translate into the gym, into CrossFit, into whatever you're doing. So it's really assessing your body before you're about to perform an activity, a sport, do a workout, and release that area so that you can bring awareness and rebuild that structure when you're performing whatever activity that is, and then at least create freedom so that you have that proper range of motion. Because it could be the ankles, it could be the knees, it could be the hips, it could be the lower core, the rib cage, the shoulders. It could even be the hands and the wrists.
Absolutely.
It can be anywhere.
I mean, think of bowling and the precision to get that strike. If you've got any kind of a hook in your hand when you're letting the ball go, the ball's going to tell you what's going on.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, big time, big time. So I also wanted to mention this. It was just coming to my head recently. Fascia decompression or block therapy, it's different than stretching, because I'm not going to 100% say like, oh, rather than that, just like do long hold stretches before. Like, you absolutely can, but I'm just trying to differentiate that there's differences between
Huge difference.
fascia decompression and block therapy, or fascia decompression, and stretching. And we talk about how stretching is think of the hamstring, and now think of an elastic band. And let's actually say you have 50 elastic bands and they're lined up linearly the way they should be, and you're stretching it and then it's contracting, stretching, contracting. When you're done doing that, it's going to look pretty well the same. But now let's say you have little knots in the elastic bands,
or you've got some tied together, and you've got number 1 tied to number 4, and so like
exactly,
because that's the reality.
Those are all of the other. It's not just as simple as a knot, like tying a simple knot in an elastic band. But sure, let's say there's, just for the analogy, there's that going on. Then yes, they're tied to other ones, but now you're stretching it. You're going to be strengthening at times those knots for some people, but in addition, you're only lengthening what's available to be lengthened, and then the adhesions really get in the way.
Yeah.
Where we want to be able to integrate more of the muscle fibers and the tissues into a stretch. And I'm not saying stretching is bad by any stretch, pun intended, but you need to be able to unlock the tissue, which is what we teach and preach with block therapy, so that you can reintegrate those fibers and tissue back in.
You know that expression, you're only as strong as your weakest link? You're only as flexible as your tightest adhesion. So you might have a whole bunch of fibers that are kind of open, but you've had a cut or you've had an injury or something, and now it's twisted and hooked to the bone. You know, that's the limiting factor now.
100%. And that's why stretching in certain instances can be somewhat harmful, because you're overstretching certain areas because the adhesion's there preventing all this potential over here. So it's like, now it's just overstretch, and then all that potential's here. We'll unlock that barricade, and now let's bring it all into synchronicity.
Yeah.
So there's big reasons why you want to do this before any activity, workout, sport.
Also, because even if you're exercising daily, we develop adhesions every single day. Gravity's always, pulling us down. We're always in our whatever each day. So if you don't release what's built up, that accumulates and accumulates and accumulates. And then again, that supports those grooves. So especially if whatever activity you're doing requires really good range of motion, and most exercise does, whether or not it's more on one side of the body or the other, we want to bring that balance of motion in so that we always have that proprioception, because this is where proprioception can get off kilter. As soon as we get twisted, like if I'm always playing tennis and I very rarely bring this left arm into action, now my proprioception is going to think that this is a balanced body, as opposed if you don't see what I'm doing, I'm leaning over and my right arm is way further to the ground than the left. So So again, like that understanding of where are our limbs in space is dependent on those fascia patterns. And so again, as you continue to play, you're going to continue to bring your body out of that proper alignment.
Right.
And then we become disconnected, because if you're only focused on, strengthening that one side that you're always using, then you're really only paying attention to some of your cells. All of your cells are part of this beautiful equation that we call our bodies. Yet if we only pay attention to some of them, if we only are in the gym and like, I want to have really big pecs, and that's all you focus on, and you don't address your back or your legs because, I don't see my back, I don't care, I want my pecs to be really big.
Yeah.
Then we're missing that boat of how do we support everything, because the more all is involved in health, the healthier you will be.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I also just, I'll kind of explain a very similar scenario if I were to go to the gym, so people can just like get a good understanding, because there's like a couple more things to add in. So if I'm about to do a workout, I'm going to do what I just talked about and what we mentioned. Find the adhesions, work in there. What am I trying to focus on today? Is it more legs? Is it squats? Is it full body? Whatever it is, I'm finding that major area, and I might do some tests to see, my rotation's actually quite limited, rotating to the left more in my lumbar spine. So I'm going to like maybe work here. Then I want to work under my right subscap, and then maybe it's my left ankle. It could literally be that, or I could hone in on a specific area. So regardless, I get that blocking component done. And then I go to the gym and start doing some of those fascia fitness movements and exercises, more so as my warm up. And that's going to start training the fascia, training the muscles into where certain structures should be aligned and what muscles should be firing up when they should be while you're performing an exercise. Because for many people, you could be doing a push-up, but there's too much emphasis on the anterior deltoid. Even you could feel tension in your traps when it shouldn't be really. And then you could be building yourself out. So how do you know what muscle should be actually activated? So I'll start doing that, warming up certain things, working on my posture a lot. And then let's just make it very simple. And I'm incorporating bodybuilding movements, which shouldn't even be called bodybuilding movement, because that just has like a weird taste to people. But I'll even, as I get my big warm up done, even between sets, I'm still moving. I'm still doing something to correct it. I don't just like sitting there for 2 minutes and just breathing and being on my phone. I'm there to do a job. So then I'll be like, okay, I noticed in that squat, I was shifting a little bit more here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually work on mobilizing this left ankle a bit more. And maybe I do have to engage more of my left glute medius to help pull that left knee more so over my toes rather than it caving in. Just as an example, I'm aware of what I'm doing in the gym. I'm not just there to say, okay, I want to get my reps in, my sets in, my sweat on, and then get out. It's an art to really be conscious of what you're doing in the gym, because you have to treat your body like that. You have to really appreciate and understand what you're doing and what your intention is for that workout.
And I like that you said that, because you're absolutely right. And I think, some people use the gym as more of a social place to hang. It's kind of like a bar, like you're there amongst, people, and it's a place to gather.
A workout can get dragged on from 30, 45 minutes to 2 hours easily.
Exactly. And for the people that are using it as a social club, likely they're not that connected to their body, because that's not their purpose for going. Mm-hmm. But if you are extremely intentional about what you're doing, whether it be training your body for a certain health and appearance, or if you're training yourself to perform a sport, then it's an intentional thing. So for those people, I think there is a deeper level of connection to what's going on in your body, because a lot of what you're saying as I'm listening, I'm thinking, wow, I mean, if I never went to the gym and I never really paid attention to this body and I want to go and work out, now I'm really kind of overwhelmed, because how do I know? How do I know if it's my foot or if it's whatever? But when you are connected to your body and you're making this, I'm going to the gym because I'm wanting to become stronger and healthier, then you are paying attention on a different level than a lot of people probably that are working out.
Big time. And everybody starts from their starting point.
Right.
And even if you've been in the gym for years, but now you're starting to bring this awareness in. You're still pretty well at a different kind of starting point. And that's exciting though. Like now you can be like, okay, I'm going to be making progress in a different way. This is going to help, rather than me going to the gym and the next day I'm feeling that I've accumulated pain. I actually feel more aligned. I'm actually feeling really good. I'm a little sore. That's okay. That's just part of us, but I'm not as sore as I used to be. I'm just feeling better. And that's really the goal. So I think if people are like kind of listening to this and saying, it's kind of overwhelming with all these things you're mentioning. Well, this is where, again, with the combination, like in our site where we have all the block therapy classes, programs, etc., but then there's the fascia fitness, just going through that and understanding your micro foundations and becoming aware. I teach you how to become aware of these certain things and understanding all these structures and the proprioception aligned with it. Then if you just go through it and you understand these movements and why you're actually doing these movements, then that's something you're going to be integrating in the gym. That's the point. You can view that as your own workout. You can make body weight movements as easy or difficult as you want. But you can also use that as warm-ups, as something to build off of, and something that you can do while you're doing other weight training exercises.
And I actually just want to pull back on what I said, because I mean, when I was in athletic therapy and I was in the gym doing what I thought I was supposed to do, because it's what I learned, I put the time in and my body did not respond the way I wanted it to, because I didn't understand, really what I was doing, even though here I'm trained as an athletic therapist. And I've shared this on a past podcast, but where for 45 minutes, I had done the stair climber because I really wanted to fit into these jeans. Like that was the goal. Like my goal was always to look smaller than I was. So now I'm working out thinking, the more muscle mass, the higher my metabolism, the more cut I'm going to look instead of bulky and thick. And, after 1 month of giving myself 45 minutes a day to, have this little test, I actually got bigger. My jeans fit less well. So I think there's a lot of people also going intentionally with a focus and a reason, and they want to do something.
Absolutely.
But it's taking them in the wrong direction because of so many things. But so I think the point here is understanding this container of ours. For some people, it just seems like this just works for you. It makes sense. Because I was in the gym doing like lots of other people doing in the gym. They looked great. They looked long and muscular, but cut. And I just looked thick and bulky and big. Yet we're doing the same stuff. And again, I was aware of my diet. So it wasn't like I was going home and just eating garbage all night. But either way, I wasn't getting the result until I recognized I wasn't breathing. And then that started to change the game for me. And then I was like, well, I don't really want to go to the gym anymore because I got nowhere in the gym. But now I'm learning yoga and I'm starting to use my body in a different way. And I think yoga's incredible. Pilates, I think, is incredible. Like all these things where you're using your body and you're connected to your breath, but you're using your body in a symmetrical way.
And that is the most realistic way, and I would almost argue proper way to be training, because you want to be able to bring your body into these movements. Like, I think yoga is a brilliant idea because it is a form of resistance training, but lengthening at the same time. And I've kind of taken these ideas and built this into the gym. I also am, I'm just going to say, like, more masculine in a way where I want to I like throwing weights around at times. And I don't want to pull that off. I want to build muscle and look a certain way. I understand that there can be some sacrifices with that process, but I'm going to be doing it in the healthiest way possible. And that's my goal. But that's not all I do. I also do incorporate different weird mobility movements and strength things that allow my body to get to these crazy range of motions while having a lot of strength in these range of motions as well. So I think what you're doing, recognizing that going to the gym was actually causing more harm than good. I was getting, it was actually doing the opposite of my goal. And I remember, I think you mentioned after doing the stair climber, your legs got bigger and you couldn't fit into the jeans when your intention was to fit into the jeans.
Well, and even I remember, because I was at University of Winnipeg, and in my first year there, I spent a lot of time in the gym there. And so There was a point where I was benching with the 245-pound plates, like 3 sets of 10.
like a 45 on each side.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was really strong and I was able to do this. But, I mean, I looked like a football player.
Yeah.
And that wasn't my goal. I didn't want to look like a football player. Yet I could bench not like a football player, but, I mean, maybe like some.
That's a lot of weight.
It was a lot of weight. And I was very, very strong. Now, having said that, now, I mean, I can hold up a 300-pound person on my legs as I'm putting them into that like Superman flight.
For a long time.
For a long time. And I don't look like that football player anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's because I've learned how to breathe.
Totally.
So,
well, and you're strengthening muscles and fascia in a different way. Size and muscle mass does not determine your strength.
not at all.
It can, to an extent. It could be a byproduct for certain people, and sure, you could argue nutrition and all this macronutrients, micronutrients plays a role, but I think if people are wanting to go to the gym, or they're going to the gym and they're not recognizing or realizing that this is actually bringing them closer towards their goal, but actually pulling them actually a little bit away, or there's certain areas they need to tweak, then be open to different forms of exercising. There's not a one size fits all for everyone. And that's what's great about block. It's like, well, anybody can do it. It doesn't matter. Anybody can do that. Anybody can learn some of these fascia fitness movements, which can be pretty simple, but it's at the same time takes a lot of focus to do it. And you have to understand where your base main balance needs to be. And then once you understand that, then you can start really pulling yourself out of alignment on purpose to further your range of motion, to strengthen your body in all different directions, which is something that you're impressive at. And that comes from years and years of practice, but also not going to the gym and working out with weights in a linear fashion.
And I think you said years and years of practice. I think that also is something really important. Like when I was in my late teens and 20s, my entire focus was on how I looked, not how I felt. And I would sacrifice how I felt to look the way I wanted to look because I was so ingrained in that, you know, you've got to be thin to be attractive mindset.
I think that you could argue nearly everybody.
But as you get older,
it reverses.
It doesn't reverse, but it balances more because what's the point of me looking spending all this time in the gym and doing all of this work, but I'm in so much pain that I can't do anything anyways. It's kind of like, you know, having all of this money, but you're unhealthy that you can't even get out of bed. What's the point of, you know, spending all your life to accumulate all this wealth, but yet you're so sick all the time that all you do is stay in bed. So you stay in bed in a mansion, in a bedroom, who cares?
Yeah.
Like it's what is the purpose of us living here?
Mm-hmm.
And what is the goal of us being here? So we need to repattern our thinking. And if we can start younger and repattern that thinking, like I wish so much sometimes I could go back to those earlier days when I used to beat the crap out of myself because I just wanted to be pretty. I just wanted to be somebody that a guy would be attracted to because I was a bit of a late bloomer. All my girlfriends had boyfriends. I didn't. And so you get feeling like, holy smokes, I need to be doing more. And then the more I did, the worse things got for a while until I started to recognize what I was doing wrong.
And I also think with how powerful social media is, especially like Instagram. Like Instagram was the big one that really popped off. Same with Facebook back in the day a bit. And then now TikTok, YouTube, like all of these social platforms don't talk much about going to the gym to feel a certain way or to be healthy because like, sure, there's definitely people that do that, but I would say from majority of what I've seen, and fitness is huge on Instagram, like it's huge, then all of these athletes, and even if they're sponsored by other companies to make these posts, they're not going to be talking about how they necessarily feel all the time. They're going to be talking about how to build a bigger butt, how to get a smaller waist, how to tone your arms, how whatever. It's very superficial in that way.
Because their feeling is coming from how many likes as opposed to how do I actually feel inside.
And from
myself.
A monetary perspective, if I can get more likes and more views and more people to buy whatever I'm promoting, I get more money. So yeah, it's driven from a bit of an incorrect intention.
Totally.
And it should be from, well, that's even why, like, if we are to have people who want to represent the Block Therapy brand, we're not communicating solely on the idea of change your appearance, but it's let's make you feel better.
No, because this is a therapy first.
Yeah.
But first and foremost, block therapy is a therapy. It is to help people have their bodies in right position. So there's health, there's range of motion, there's fluidity.
Yeah.
All the other stuff is secondary to your health.
Yeah.
I mean, we can be fit and unhealthy. We can be healthy and fit.
Yeah.
I'm going to put the health always in front because I know way too many people that look fit. They've got the hard body, but their organs are stressed. They might have issues with their gut. They might have heart issues. They might have immune issues, like all of these things. But yet you might be like hard-bodied and you might look really good in like a pair of jeans. But really, it's how our cells feel is how we depict what life is really all about.
And that's where a lot of confidence comes from too. It's how you feel. It's not how you think you feel or how you necessarily look all the time. Because sure, you can look a certain way, but if you're feeling awful, a lot of confidence comes from your energy and your presence.
Totally.
But okay, I think we should shift now to
The actual point of this conversation.
well, yeah, but no, this is all crucial information. But now the opposite of doing block therapy before, why would you want to do it after you train? And it's a simpler conversation because it's based more around the idea of recovery. So you just went to the gym, you just stressed your body. There's inflammation intentionally positioned to where that focus was, or it could be the entire body. It's not a bad thing. The inflammation's sent there for a purpose to rebuild. And now let's assist that inflammation. So let's say you did a leg workout and that was your focus. Now your thighs, your glutes, your hip flexors, your calves, everything's feeling like taxed, stressed, a little compressed. They might feel pumped up, a lot of blood flow. So assisting that is phenomenal for recovery. That was like one of the biggest things I noticed when I started doing this. I'm like, I was working at Popeye's, the supplement store, and I was taking all these supplements that help with recovery, the proteins, the amino acids, the whatever it was, the nitric oxides. And it's funny because like it didn't like really help, which is kind of funny. It wasn't until I like dove into my tissue and I'm like, my chest would typically be sore for 4 or 5 days after a big workout. If I went to the gym, came back right after when it was still ripe and I just pumped all that blood there, I had some micro tearing going on, whatever. If I could go in there and just keep unlocking and opening up those gates of flow, I remember waking up the next day and I'm like, it feels 80% recovered. How is that even possible? I was blown away. And then I just kept doing that. I'm like, this is it. This is a mirror. This is it. And it still is. Like, it's incredible. So it's a very powerful recovery tool. But if, just jumping to it, if I were to choose, if I had to pick between before or after, I would say work out before, I would say do block therapy before, because you're at least awakening the body to flow, oxygenating, getting the diaphragm working, and releasing adhesion so that you can position yourself and work out more in that proper alignment compared to working from a poor foundation, getting really tight and compressed after your workout from a poor foundation and alignment, and then having to backtrack and now see like, okay, well now I just feel really twisted. Where is this coming from? So then you have to like work the block in all different areas to unwind your body, but to also help with recovery.
So I would say too, though, like what's happening, let's say you just did a crazy leg workout and your quads have now created all of this exhaust like a car. Like now we've turned on these cells that might have been a little more dormant than normal because now you're working them out. So in the adhesions, will the exhaust get trapped? So that lactic acid feeling the next day, that stiffness. So by working, that's what you're going to help to mobilize as well, because that acid can also cause damage. So, and that's the thing. So like if you've worked out and you blocked before your workout and then the next day you wake up and you're stiff, that's giving you a little indicator that had you actually, spent a little time in what area of your body you worked, then you're going to be mobilizing that as well. So really, again, as we know, there's benefits to the before and after, but it's each person has to figure that out for themselves. Maybe you've got, instead of doing a half an hour before and not after, maybe 20 minutes before, but 10 minutes after. Like, play around a little bit, because you're going to feel the benefits of both. But each individual person can figure out, like, try it. Because you all got to figure out how you feel in your own body and what makes the most sense for you. Because we all have a limited amount of time.
Totally.
But it was funny because I remember also, like, here was my mindset back when I was working in the gym. Because again, my goal was to lose weight, and I can't remember the percentage, but somebody was sharing, like, if you just stretch for 10 minutes before you do your workout, you're going to burn this many more calories. But in my brain, I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I'm not sweating. I'm not huffing and puffing when I'm stretching. I don't even see that as a relevant thing. So I'm not going to do it. So it's funny how your brain works though, right? Because I mean, especially if you have that sense that I need to work really hard to get results, then your mindset is the harder you work, the better the result. Where it should be the smarter you work, the better the result. You don't want to work harder, you want to work smarter. And sometimes working harder is working smarter, but not all the time.
Yeah. Well, and again, like, even with that statement, that can go for almost
Everything.
For everything in life, like especially business. You got to do both at times, but it can't be primarily just work hard, but it can't just be work smart. You have to find that balance of both. So
it's like the balance of the brain and the body, like, you know, the hard body, the smart, like, we've got to bring that balance into all that we do. And I think the younger generation is so brain centered. They've kind of lost the connection to the body in a lot of ways, because too much on the phone, too much on the computer. So there's an imbalance there in what's going on. And we need to give the body a little bit of attention and time. And there's no better way than to dive in through those layers of fascia and to connect with those cells that are further than what you're consciously aware of through the process of time. And that is bringing you into that moment of, we need to rejuvenate. We need to slow down. You know, running is going to bring you to the end game of life a lot sooner than if we actually take the time to smell the roses. And it's in the breath book. I just wrote the quote yesterday because it's so profound. How we breathe dictates how long we live. It's not the exact wording, but I mean, essentially, if we're all the time, if you've got 1 million breaths and you breathe them really quick and shallow, your lifespan will be shorter than if you have those 1 million breaths and you take your time, and each breath lasts for however long. The longer the breath, the longer the lifespan.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's like a whole component that we didn't like dive into, but needs to be integrated into how you train as well. Because if your breath is really poor and weak, when you are performing activity, you're going to fatigue quicker.
And that was me. And you're going to compress more. So you're going to, like, I was hard and compressed and congested and ballooned. And it didn't matter if I did a 45-minute run or 45 minutes on the stair climber. I was sweating like a bandit, but my body was not changing for the better. It was getting thicker and denser and harder and more compressed. So yeah, I mean, work again, it's being smart about how hard you work and how you work, as opposed to just, I'm going to go and I'm going to work hard.
Well, and funny, because I was just thinking about this, because some people might not have time to block either before or after. Like, let's give an example. You work till 4 or 5, then your fitness class is at 5:30, and you have to drive straight there. And then you have to get home and make dinner for your family, like whatever the case is. So the idea of working smarter here is you could find time anytime throughout the day where you're just getting some sort of blocking, even passive blocking. Like maybe at night you're watching a show with your family or alone, whatever you're doing, and you're just going to do some block when you're watching the show. That's a great thing to do, because you're like, even a big routine that I would do to get myself like really motivated to go to the gym, I'd be blocking, watching a YouTube video or doing something educational, work in these areas, spend 15, 20 minutes. And then now I'm getting the education or the motivation, whatever I'm trying to from YouTube or whatever I'm watching, while I'm still getting the benefits here. I'm still working and focusing on my breath. And then I go to the gym, come back, maybe I do a cool down routine, and I feel like that could probably be enough for me at the state I'm at with the years I've been doing this. And then a healthy routine for me. But you're going to say something.
Well, yeah, because even, focusing on that exhale for a count of 6, inhale for 4, that's a great way to prep your body before any activity. Like, so you can do that on your drive there. You can do that if you're listening to your boss talking before you have to leave your office. You can do that in so many ways when you're cooking dinner, when you're doing this. Like, so that in itself is an exercise of prep. It's part of fascia decompression, is bringing that, squeezing the belly small as you exhale, and then allowing the belly to relax as you inhale, because that in itself is going to prep your breath in a very different way than if you're rushing because you've got to get to your gym after your job and you're stressed. And so you're stressed, so you're breathing shallow. Then you rush. Then you go to the gym and you're working, so your breath is already shallow. Even for 5 minutes, just find that moment to decompress with the breath.
Well, it's going to oxygenate your system more too when you focus more on that exhalation.
Yeah.
Because you're allowing, and correct me on this, you're allowing more of that carbon dioxide in, because carbon dioxide is more of that delivery mechanism of oxygen to the cell.
You're allowing it to build in your cells because, again, it's the currency for the oxygen. So if I've just, if I'm only moving in the grooves that I've created, I've got all these cells on the other side of those adhesions that aren't part of the equation of the activity. So then those cells that aren't part of the equation aren't getting oxygen because they're not really working. And that's the point. You go and you do bicep curls in one linear range. Those cells that are working, they're getting the oxygen, but all the other cells that aren't, they're not. And that's why isometric work is so powerful, because when we're holding something for 5, 10 breaths, instead of just allowing ourselves to use momentum in the groove, now you're actually holding, and now you're creating an integration of the cells in the surrounding spaces, because there's not enough energy just of those cells in the normal groove. We've got to bring in, and that's why you start shaking. Like you're holding and it's like, whoa, this is getting heavy. I'm shaking, but you're integrating and you're waking those other cells up. You're melting those adhesions and you're bringing them into the equation to create carbon dioxide, because now they're getting used. Now they're going to take the oxygen, and now you've got more cells that are awake for that action.
Totally. Yeah, it's amazing. Even if I do the like the Wim Hof method, what's the actual term for that? Is it Timu?
I'm not sure.
Timu.
I don't know.
I butchered that. But there's like an actual term for the intentional overbreathing, where it's just like really deep inhales, deep exhales at a quite rapid pace. You do like 30 breaths at a time. Then you hold the exhalation for as long as you can. And then you take a big inhalation, hold that as long as you can. Then you repeat. But it's powerful because when you're holding that exhalation, after you've just done all of this, it's allowing the oxygen to more so absorb in, because you have also that buildup of CO2.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just general easy statement like what you mentioned is, yeah, absolutely. Focus on the breath before you're going to the gym or playing a sport or activity. You're going to have so much more energy. It's absolutely incredible. Or doing deep breathing like what I was just talking about.
And that's why too, like if you do, like, let's say I've got, I want my shoulders to be strong but aligned, going into those edges of, okay, so like if I take my arm back, here's my range of motion, but then you contract those PNFs, proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation.
Yep.
So now you're integrating. So I've opened it up so I can't move any further, but now there's a contraction. That contraction is pulling more blood and energy in to melt those adhesions that are at that edge. And then after that contraction, wow, look at my range of motion has just increased that much. So blocking is a very quick hack almost for that.
Yeah. Because
as soon as you lie on this and you melt, then it will be like, okay, here's my range. Block your armpit. Holy smoke, here's my range.
PNF is actually incredible. It's a really good complement to blocking. It really is.
Well, and really it's isometrics.
Yeah.
So if we're on the block and we're doing the pec position and we're lifting that shoulder up and we're holding for 10 breaths, now we're not only releasing the holding pattern, but we're also drawing and holding and strengthening. So for people that do want to do work in the gym, it would be a great idea to take 3 weeks, 3 months off of your whatever, block with the intention of isometrics, and then get back to the gym, because now you've really brought, again, that proprioception, that opening, that balance into your body. So from here now you can strengthen from that very conscious state.
and integrate everything you learned and your new alignment into the gym. It's not just falling back into that mental groove and pattern of, okay, I got 3 sets of 10 on bench press. I'm just going to go and pump this out as fast and hard as I can.
And then you might not even want to be back in the gym when you've done it.
Well, exactly.
Because you might say like, wow, like, why do I need it? I feel so good.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. So I think those are the big reasons behind doing block therapy or fascia decompression prior to exercise, workouts, sports activities, or if you want to do it post. And
no matter what, though, no matter what, whatever you're doing, take the 3 to 5 minutes, engage the breath.
Yeah.
Because that will be a game changer for how you do whatever you choose to do over on the other side.
Yeah, before, amazing, even after would be a massive compliment as well. So I know we talked a lot about like doing it before activity and workouts, but after was a little bit shorter lived just because it's more of a simplistic way. It's like the exercise is done.
Yeah.
Now you're in the rebuilding phase.
Yeah.
So if you want to start pumping out the lactic acid and releasing those adhesions while you're in a warm, heated state, it will help with that recovery significantly. But that's pretty much answers.
But sorry, just
yeah.
I was kind of saying this again, but again, the reason why after even focusing on that breath, because now you have made all those cells work. So there's all this exhaust. This is the most optimal time for that oxygen exchange to happen.
Right.
So whether you're doing it with blocking or just focusing on your breathing, focus on that exhale for 6, inhale for 4 breath after the workout so that you can make sure that you do take away the carbon dioxide, but replace it with the oxygen.
Yeah,
and then you've probably awakened more cells.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool.
Love it. That was cool. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I would love people to comment, if they're on YouTube, their thoughts on this, because it's worked for myself, for you, for so many people in our community, and it's a bit of a different view on it, but I'm just curious to see what people think, and if they have any questions related to this topic, to leave them below. Even future podcast ideas, if you have them, leave them in the comments below as well, because we love hearing what people have to say and being able to communicate about it. But that wraps up the episode. And want to learn more about block therapy or just try your stuff out, check us out on YouTube, Block Therapy on YouTube. Our website's blocktherapy.com. They can jump in with the sampler program. That's enough to give you a feeling of fascia decompression before you even go to the gym, or even after. It's $9 for 9 videos. Use a rolled up towel as a tool. Incredible results. And that's it. So thank you for joining us and listening to this discussion. And be sure to subscribe and like the video if, of course, you enjoyed it. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.